All right, folks, it is January 30th, 2025. And of course, a lot of things are going on in the world. And I'll be telling you about some of these incidences and some of the things that are taking place. And after that, we'll bring in definitely Sasha Starr and Rick Rosner and see what they've got going on in their mind. And we'll see if other folks join us as well. But 8 hostages were released from Gaza amid chaotic scenes as Palestinian prisoners were set to be freed. So Netanyahu's office says Israel receives guarantees on avoiding mobs in hostage releases. So that's something else that we're seeing in the news as hostages Egam Berger, Arbo Yohad, and Gadi Moses and 5 Thai nationals were freed from Gaza. So definitely that's something going on in the news as Israel also suspends the Palestinian prisoner release after the chaotic hostage handover and all along those lines. And of course, a lot of people are paying attention to the Lunar New Year, and millions around the world are celebrating the Lunar New Year and ring in the Year of the Snake. So the Year of the Snake is all about shedding that bad energy. So hopefully that means we're going to have positive energy in this particular year if you believe in Chinese zodiacs and all along those lines. And fears hit East Jerusalem as Israel moves to close UN Palestinian Refugee Agency. So Israel orders UNRWA to cease operation in the country over terror ties, and it's saying that it miserably failed in its mandate. So Israel's ban on UN's Palestinian Aid Agency has come into effect, and all along those lines. So we'll see how this all plays in terms of humanitarian aid. And freed hostage Agam Berger credits faith in a message from the chopper when he was coming back home, and all along those lines. And like mother, like daughter, Agam kept the Shabbat and kosher even during captivity. Our hero has returned. Hamas releases 8 more Gaza hostages as part of the ceasefire deal, is what the USA did today was reporting, and all along those lines. And rescuers in Japan tried to reach a driver trapped in a sinkhole for days. So that driver has been in that sinkhole for days, and sinkholes near Tokyo merge, and man still trapped on it the third day. So Japan's sinkhole doubles in width as crews work to free the truck driver stuck down there, and all along those lines. And Angela Merkel criticizes the German frontrunner Merz over migration vote with far right support. So Merkel jolts German campaign with a broadside of her own party leader, and all along those lines. So definitely that's something going on as well. So we're definitely seeing a lot of things taking place in the world and in the news, and of course they're all over in the various continents that exist in the world and all in that space. The DR Congo president Felix Tshisekedi vows a vigorous response to M23 rebels. So the Congo's leader is calling for massive military mobilization as Rwanda-backed rebels expand their control. So the DRC leader is calling for military recruits as Rwandan-backed rebels advance. So yes, there is conflict in the African nations as well. And Salwin Momaki, the Koran burner who sparked international tension. Definitely, he's in the news as well. So the man who staged the Koran burning protests in Sweden has been shot dead, authorities say. So Iraqi at the center of the Koran burning in Sweden was shot dead before his court verdict. So Sweden is pointing to foreign power after Iraqi refugee was killed, and all along those lines. And looks like London Heathrow will be getting a third runway. So the UK government is backing Heathrow expansion in push for faster growth. So it looks like there might be an extra airport if you're flying over there or a third runway if you're flying over there toward London and all along those lines. I've not done enough international travel, so I wouldn't know about flying into Heathrow, but who knows, maybe that'll change in the not too distant future and everything. And a passenger on a down flight include both American and Russian figure skaters. So an American airline plane went down when it collided with a Black Hawk helicopter near Washington, D.C. No survivors have been requested. And oh my is what one air traffic radio said and tells us about the American airline plane crash. So it looks like there were no survivors, but on the plane were both American and Russian figure skaters. And the cabinet picks face confirmation hearings as Trump looks to transform government. So looks like three of Trump's most controversial picks, including RFK, face simultaneous grilling. So it looks like we'll see how this all goes as three of the more contentious Trump nominees will appear before the Senate. So Health nominee RFK Jr. to face further grilling at the Senate confirmation hearings, and definitely there's even some conversation about what he has said about antidepressants and all along those lines. So definitely we'll see how this all goes and what happens in this space. And the White House rescinded its funding memo after the GOP senators hit the ceiling. So the White House rescinds a memo on federal aid freeze that caused widespread confusion. So even in Tampa Bay leaders see anxiety and confusion over the White House funding pause. So definitely that's something going on as well. And Trump is saying that Trump's offer to federal workers is not a buyout. Resignation push deepens worries about the effect on government services. So federal workers are pondering an existential question, which is, do I pack up or do I quit? So that's something else that's going on and everything. So to pay for Trump tax cuts, the House GOP is floating a plan to slash benefits for the poor and others as well. So definitely looks like there are some proposals in there that include immigration, taxes, and more. So we'll see how this all plays out and what the general public has to say as well. And Meta is to pay Trump $25 million settlement for shutting his account after January 6th. So Trump signs a settlement agreement with Meta, according to sources, and it looks like Meta will pay $25 million to settle that particular lawsuit. So definitely it looks like Mark Zuckerberg started the Meta earnings call by praising the Trump administration and all along those lines. And Bob Menendez says Trump is right after being sentenced to 11 years in prison. So definitely it looks like disgraced ex-senator Bob Menendez has been sentenced to 11 years in that particular case, which was a bribery and corruption case. So definitely that's some of the things that are going on. And here are the cities where ICE raids are taking place. They include Miami, Chicago, Atlanta, New York City, Phoenix, and more. So Trump officials issue quotas to ICE officers to ramp up arrests, and the U.S. military deportation flights likely cost more than first class. And also understand that to accommodate some of these folks that are being deported and everything, the President Trump has approved money to reopen Guantanamo Bay and all along those lines, because I think they're expecting to hold multiple thousand members of the Latin community in that area. So he is actually looking like he's going to reopen Guantanamo Bay, and that is something like that. And so definitely it'll be interesting to see what about this, because it looks like that's where Trump will be sending these alleged criminals and all along those lines. So he's prepared. He's moving to prepare Guantanamo Bay for 30,000 criminal illegal aliens, is what he is saying, and all along those lines. So definitely we'll see what folks have to say about a number of these issues and everything along those lines. The DC mayor said she couldn't disagree more as she denounced the pardons for the January 6th defendants. And even Lindsey Graham, a top Trump ally, says pardoning Capitol attackers sends the wrong signal. So definitely we'll see what folks have to say about a number of these issues and all along those lines. So I'm bringing in Rick Rosner and also Sasha Starr, and I do see that Nikki is in the background, so he's here with us as well. So what's our take on all of this news items? And I think you may have that Mickey Mouse thing going again.
This was the first fatal crash involving a U.S. commercial airliner since 2009, and it's just sad as heck. It's 67 people lost their lives just about instantly, and I mean the plane was maybe half a mile from touching down. It was so close,
Right.
and maybe they should rethink having training exercises for military helicopters around busy ass bases. There are articles out today talking about how the number of close calls are much higher than has been previously reported.
Yeah, 65 people, 60 people or plus were on board, and no survivors right now on that one. But I fly into Reagan a lot. And one thing about last time I flew in, it was a touch and go. They bounced off the runway. They almost bounced off again because the weather was so bad, and they only have one runway. So people don't realize this is a really tiny airport that holds a lot of traffic. And what the heck was a Black Hawk helicopter doing in the area? I mean, you know, it's all the pilots know that that's a real tough airport to fly in and out.
They said they were these were experienced pilots flying with night vision goggles doing their annual certification run.
But do they have to do it near Reagan Airport?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, the U.S. has lots of airports where the city grew up around them. Chicago used to have an insane, I think, Midway Airport.
Yeah, Midway. I've flown to that. Midway is not fun either because of the same reason.
Do they still use that? Because that started off like...
Yeah, they do. They use it for Southwest. If you're going Southwest, you're going into Midway.
So these were airports that were started 70, 80 years ago when there was less growth, and then the city just goes boom up around them, and now it's a tight...
But it's convenient to fly in them because you're really close to town. So I fly into Reagan because you're right in the heart of DC and you don't have too far to go, as opposed to Dulles, which is way the heck out there. But I'm not the only one. A lot of people fly into Reagan. I mean, it is one of the busiest airports in the country.
It's one of the busiest airports.
One runway. So that Black Hawk helicopter had no business being around. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, no business being in that general area and everything along those lines. Hey, Sasha, just really quickly, what is your thoughts? Because you're the one that has brought it up several times. I think Jacoby's brought it up too, but this whole notion of the technocrats, and I guess one of the technocrats has kind of bent their knees and everything because they're giving a nice little check to Donald Trump, that being Facebook, because I guess they were saying that they were wrong when they banned him from their platform and everything along those lines. So what is your take on this latest move by Mark Zuckerberg to, I guess, appease Trump and everything like that? Because they are giving him a nice little check. I mean, he's already getting a nice little check from his crypto and everything, but it does look like he is getting a nice check from Zuckerberg and the fine folks over there at Facebook.
Is that a nice check? I would expect Zuckerberg to pay $1 billion at least. It's 25 million. Yeah. It's a change for Meta. Look at their stock. Day, tens of billions of dollars. What are you talking about? 25? I don't know what's happened to this Trump that he accepted 25 when he could have go for. He couldn't extract 35 from Zuckerberg, or 55, or 75. Why he settled for 25? That's a laugh of the day. However, obviously, Zuckerberg would pay anything to settle this and be in good graces because he's already accused by Trump's team that he is not really for Trump. Well, he's saying now that he's for Trump, but he's not sincere enough. He's not jumping like Musk on stage. No, he's not doing all that. So he's not sincere. So he's not really for Trump. So we have to actually further to look into his businesses and so on. And so anyway, maybe this 25 million will in good grace because fight Trump at this point is futile. It's impossible. And especially he has responsibilities to shareholders of his public company. So he must step out and down and just wait until situation will change. Although I don't see how it will change. But there are a lot of things going on. And for example, the tariffs. Mm-hmm. Yesterday there were negotiations between a Canadian representative and White House. And Canadian representative said that, well, look, it's up to you. Our package is ready and will go next day, maximum 2, from the moment your tariffs will be announced. So it's going to be 1st of February. We are acting on 2nd, the latest this 3rd of February. We've prepared everything, just waiting ready to use. My question is this: if Canada has it already, why Canada would not start with their package and see what Trump is going to do about it?
Yeah, right.
I want to go back to the crash for a second because Twitter is full of people's lunatic theories about who's responsible. But one that I found interesting is The number of medical events that triggered official reporting requirements among U.S. military pilots rose more than 1,700% from 2019 to 2022, an increase the Pentagon says was the result of COVID-19. So car crashes and car insurance premiums are up since COVID can screw up your brain. And so it's maybe we need to have better certification of pilots if COVID is making their reflexes slower, their judgment, less sharp. I don't know. Something to look at.
But the thing is, that area should be restricted airspace. Actually, a lot of Washington, D.C. is restricted airspace. They don't allow planes there. So like I said, what is the Black Hawk helicopter doing?
I think it's a regular thing, but just this time, it's way too early to say, who screwed up. But the plane was making a normal approach.
Normal approach, right? And they only have a little sliver to go through. Like I said, that's not the easiest airport to fly into, and it just doesn't make any sense. Yes, Sasha.
First of all, the pilot of the commercial jet, he was focused on landing, and it was so close to landing that not only he didn't see, but at least there is no acknowledgement that he saw the helicopter. And even if he would see it, there was nothing he can do to prevent the crash. Now, the helicopter saw the commercial flight, and there was exchange between him and the tower about that there is a commercial air flight or so on. So they saw it, and how come they couldn't avoid the crash, I don't understand. But however, there was very interesting interview today on CNBC with the president of Southwest Airlines. And when he was asked about the reason for the crash and how to prevent it in the future, he said that the air tower equipment is dating back from the 60s. It's never been updated. So today it requires much more capacities to really, in places like Washington. So this is inexcusable what's going on. So I think that was a message to White House administration when they're cutting everything and everywhere to take a look at the air towers using equipment back to, so it's like 60 years old equipment. Amazing.
Yep. Hey, just really quickly, hey, Nick, along those same lines and everything, one of the other things that's been talked about is what's going to go on with our education system. And apparently one of those sweeping, which I know you love, kind of executive orders is President Trump signed several executive orders on Wednesday aimed at reshaping American schools, including restricting how racism is taught in classrooms, curbing anti-Semitism, and this is one that I thought you would really love, allowing taxpayer dollars to fund private schools and all along those lines. So he's definitely talking about that he wants to prioritize federal resources consistent with applicable laws to promote patriotic education, whatever that is and everything. So what's your take on this notion of the federal government wanting to get in the school education business? Because apparently he wants to dictate what is out there.
I thought they were getting out of it. I mean, his goal was to shut down the Department of Education and get out of it. So the thing is, they're showing we're using runway 33. Well, that's the only runway in Reagan to land. But I thought they were getting out of education and leave that to the state and local governments to determine. And when it comes to taxpayers paying for private schools, well, as explained to me when I went to private schools, I pay for it. My dad used to say we pay for it twice. Taxes, so you can go to public school, which you're not going to. Then I pay tuition to go to private school. So, from a person who's gone to private school, I can tell you it's a double tax if you end up going there. So what he's trying to do is level the playing field so that people that go to private schools don't have to pay twice the amount to go to. But
like you said, he was supposed to be getting out of it, but apparently the orders on Wednesday unleashed the education department, and like you, I thought he was getting rid of that department, to enforce penalties against schools that stray from the themes of quote unquote patriotic education that Trump has said should be the underpinning of American history classes. And they seem to design to send schools scrambling to check course catalogs for any content that can invite the government to rescind federal funds. So it sounds like they are actually getting more into education than less into education and everything. So it sounds like they want certain things to be taught and certain other things not to be, because the order cited existing law, under which the government is authorized to deport a person on a visa who endorses or espouses terrorist activity. So there also looks like they're going after folks that they say are being anti-Semitic or anti-Arab or anti-Muslim or a number of other antis that are out there and everything. So what is our thoughts, including you, Rick, about this notion that I guess the education system, because the order also further warned that K through 12 schools that defy the order could face investigation by the education department and ultimately a loss of their federal funding. So I guess a lot of schools are going to be scrambling.
There are a bunch of articles out today about our national test scores are out, yes. And they're down again. Students are worse at reading a lot, worse at math. And I can tell you, I mean, people do, including myself, and including probably all of you, do not read the way we used to, because we used to have to search for information in books and read magazines and newspapers. And now all we do is type something into Google and there it is. So my focused reading skills have decayed like crazy. And so I don't know what you do with today's kids, but whatever Trump is up to, it's probably not going to help our test scores.
Well, I'm going to bring in Jatovia, and I think we got Kim here as well. But Jatovia, I was talking about this notion that apparently one of the latest orders is that the schools have to have a patriotic education, and I'm still trying to figure out what that is and everything along those lines. But any take on what's going on with our education department?
So let me explain something. And we tend to forget words and what was used in the past and things that people have said. There's a term called projecting. Throughout the campaign and everything, and this is why the Republican Party is great at messaging, from the term called projection. All throughout the past 4 years, we've heard that the Biden administration is indoctrinating our kids, and they're teaching this woke ideology and all this other stuff. That is essentially what they're doing. Donald Trump is he's uselessly throwing a WWE person at the top of the education department, which she's unqualified. I'm sorry, you may be friends, whatever else. She's unqualified to be the head of the education department. Hasn't done anything in that arena to make her qualified. But he's doing that with every department. But she's gonna get put in there. They've also said they wanted to get rid of the education department, which is crazy. So you're gonna throw somebody in just to fire him. On top of that, him wanting to take over and decide what is taught and what is not taught, that is indoctrination. He's already putting out propaganda, fooling every individual that has voted for him. But that is all this is. It's indoctrination that they fought against and said, we can't indoctrinate our kids. That's what this is. It's exactly what it is.
In all due respects, that's what the Democrats have been doing for years. So
tell me how. Nick, see, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. First off, you said, you legitimately said, Nick, you legitimately said, you said that the Democrats were indoctrinating the kids, and that's what they have been doing. Now, to prove that, because I can prove that Donald Trump is trying to indoctrinate kids by him deciding. Donald Trump ran Trump University, and it was trash. It got sued, and that's what brought about the whole lawsuits against for-profit school institutions, because he was not teaching anything. He was robbing people. And so he has no basis and no understanding of the education department. No Democrat that you can speak of was trying to control the actual education department. Most textbooks are controlled by the legislature out of Texas. So to say the Democrats were trying to indoctrinate and everything else, so you're just projecting. This is what Donald Trump is doing.
Projecting. Apparently, it's really going on. I was kind of shocked that they're putting pride flags in public schools. They don't belong in public schools. No, if they're going to put pride flags, you got to put the United States Chess Federation flags.
There is
put your agenda in public schools.
No, again, now you're doing it again. You're pushing a propaganda piece. You're pushing a propaganda piece.
Now you're not liking it because the shoe's on the other foot, and I can understand it.
It's a propaganda piece, what you're saying. The pride flags that go in schools are just like the other flags that also go in schools. So it is nothing different than any other flag that got put up. The only flag that is not accepted in the school is the Confederate battle flag, but that also has been put up in schools. But you said nothing about that, which actually promotes racism and actually the enslavement of people.
There is room for civics education in school, kind of the kind we had. But I mean, when Schoolhouse Rock did, I'm a bill. How do you make bills? All that. Also, we had a 1-week segment back in 6th grade on what propaganda is, how to spot the tactics used by advertisers. I already knew all this stuff because I collected Mad Magazine, and it made fun of advertising. So, but there's room to teach people, to be skeptical of bullshit in a fairly nonpartisan manner. I think a lot of that has been squeezed out of school because a lot of stuff has been squeezed out because schools are pinched for time and money.
Hey, Rick, just really quickly, and this is for everybody on here because it came up in the U.S. with banks. It came up with a number of other things, but this is really interesting, and it comes from another part of the world and everything. But at what point do we stop making things legal, people, and everything? Because apparently in New Zealand, and we do have some people that watch from New Zealand, a mountain in New Zealand is now recognized as a legal person. This was put out on the news on Thursday, so it was actually announced earlier today because a mountain in New Zealand is considered an ancestor by indigenous people and has now been recognized as a legal person after a new law granted it all the rights and responsibilities of a human being. So Mount Taranaki, now known as Taranaki Mayangi, its Maori name, is the latest natural feature to be granted personhood in New Zealand.
That's fine. That doesn't affect anything. Citizens.
Well, maybe it's an executive order by Trump. He's going to start naming mountains after people and then creating them to become people because he signs an executive order that way. That's what I'm saying. The executive orders don't necessarily mean they're legal. It just means that's his position on this. Currently,
everybody should know, and everybody probably does know, that Citizens United was the Supreme Court decision that said in terms of free speech, corporations are people.
Right.
And that thing has done a lot. It made it very, very hard to get money. Every presidential election is the most expensive election in history.
That was probably not one of the Supreme Court's better decisions, because if you look at it, that means as an attorney, I'm going to start creating people by setting up corporations. So that has created more problems than it solved, unfortunately. But realize the Supreme Court doesn't always get it right. That's the reason they correct things like they did Roe versus Wade, and they also corrected Korematsu versus the United States. So you see there are a certain amount of corrections. However, my opinion is Roe versus Wade was actually decided correctly, and the other one is not. But you can differ depending on how you're interpreting the Constitution, and it's just like, remember he created this executive order: birthright citizens are illegal, especially if they're illegal birthright citizens. Well, that's not what the Constitution says. However, it's going to still be up to the Supreme Court to interpret this, and so this will create a lot of it'll create a lot of media hype for Pod TV, so it keeps us on the air. If we didn't have him, could you imagine 4 more years of a boring Biden administration? I don't know if we'd be able to survive. I think we'd all be out of business, Mark. The media would be.
The media is always going to be around.